Jonathan Whitmore believed control was the highest form of love. As a billionaire real estate tycoon based in New York, he had spent his life solving problems with precision contracts and money. When his daughter Emily was paralyzed in a car accident 2 years earlier, he applied the same logic. The best doctors, the most advanced rehabilitation equipment, a mansion redesigned for accessibility. Yet despite all of it, something essential was missing. Emily was alive, but she was no longer living. Emily had once been vibrant, captain of her school's dance team, endlessly curious, full of plans. After the accident, she became quiet and distant. She spoke politely to therapists, smiled for visitors, and thanked her father for everything he did. But her eyes no longer carried light. Jonathan noticed it but didn't know how to fix it. So he worked longer hours and trusted the professionals. One evening, Jonathan returned home unexpectedly early. A major deal had been postponed, leaving him restless. Instead of going straight to his office, he walked through the mansion's east wing, an area rarely used since Emily's accident. As he passed the old ballroom, he heard music drifting through the hallway. Soft, rhythmic, familiar. It stopped him in his tracks. He slowly approached the door and looked inside. What he saw made his breath catch. Emily was there, seated in her wheelchair at the center of the room. Her posture was relaxed, her face open, glowing with a genuine smile Jonathan had not seen in years. Standing in front of her was Marcus Reed, the black janitor who worked the night shift. Marcus was gently moving to the music, guiding Emily's hands through the air, stepping side to side as if they were dancing together. It wasn't fast or dramatic, just graceful. Respectful movement filled with quiet intention. For a moment, Jonathan felt anger surge through him, then confusion, then something closer to fear. This was not how things were supposed to be. Marcus wasn't family. He wasn't a therapist. He was an employee. Marcus noticed Jonathan standing there and immediately stopped. "Sir, I'm sorry," he said quickly, stepping back. "I didn't mean any disrespect." Emily turned her wheelchair and saw her father. Her smile didn't fade. That unsettled Jonathan more than anything else. "Dad," she said calmly, "we were just dancing." Jonathan cleared his throat. "This isn't appropriate," he said, forcing authority into his voice. "Emily, you should be resting. And you, this isn't part of your job." Marcus nodded. "You're right, sir. I'll leave." "No," Emily said firmly, her voice stronger than Jonathan had heard in a long time. "He stays." Jonathan froze. His daughter looked directly at him, not with anger or defiance, but with certainty. "He helps me," she continued. "Not my body, me." Jonathan had no immediate response. For the first time since the accident, he realized that while he had been trying to fix Emily's life, someone else had been helping her feel. The next morning, Jonathan Whitmore sat in his study, staring out the floor-to-ceiling window, replaying the previous night again and again. Emily's smile, her confidence, the way she had spoken with certainty, it unsettled him. Not because it was wrong, but because it revealed how little he truly understood what his daughter needed. For the first time in 2 years, Jonathan questioned whether his money had been building walls instead of bridges. He asked Marcus Reed to come to his office that afternoon. When Marcus arrived, his shoulders were tense, his expression guarded. Men in his position learned early to expect the worst. "Sit down, Marcus," Jonathan said evenly. Marcus sat, hands clasped. "Mr. Whitmore, I want to be clear. I never crossed any boundaries. Your daughter asked me to stay and play music. I only wanted to help." Jonathan studied him. "Why dance?" he asked. Marcus hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because she used to talk about it, how it made her feel free. I could see she still felt that music inside her. When we move, even sitting down, she isn't thinking about what she lost. She's thinking about what she still has." The words landed harder than Jonathan expected. He dismissed Marcus without discipline, but with a weight on his chest he hadn't felt in years. Over the following days, Jonathan began watching instead of managing. From a distance, he observed Emily during her physical therapy sessions. The therapists were competent, professional, and kind, but Emily went through the motions like a guest fulfilling an obligation. At night, when Marcus quietly played music in the ballroom, Emily transformed. Her shoulders relaxed. Her laughter returned. She initiated movements, choosing the rhythm, leading in her own way. One evening, Jonathan stayed and watched the entire session. Emily noticed him but didn't stop. She met his eyes and smiled, inviting him into her world without saying a word. Something inside Jonathan cracked open. A week later, Jonathan made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He authorized funding for a new rehabilitation initiative focused on movement, rhythm and emotional expression for patients with paralysis. The program partnered with a medical center in New Haven, combining traditional therapy with creative movement. Marcus was offered a paid position as a movement consultant. The story spread quietly at first, then louder. A billionaire, a janitor, a paralyzed daughter. Headlines framed it as shocking, unexpected, even controversial. But inside the Whitmore home, things were changing in simpler ways. Jonathan began having dinner with Emily again. Real conversations, not reports from doctors, but questions about her thoughts, her fears, her hopes. He listened without interrupting, without fixing. One night, as music played softly in the ballroom, Emily looked at her father and said, "You can dance with me too, you know." Jonathan hesitated, then stepped forward. He placed his hands